Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today it's episode 6 of Fantasy Genre Blends. If you guys haven't seen any of my previous videos, I will link the playlist up above and in the description so you guys can check that out. This is essentially a series of videos that I've put together where I explore different genres blended with fantasy. It's that simple. So typically I split the videos into 3 different categories. I have my past TBR that I made in my previous video. I have books that I've just run across since my last video that also fit the mold of being a fantasy genre blend, and then of course my future TBR, the 3 books that I plan on reading for the next video. So without further ado, let's get started. The first book that was on my past TBR was The Stranger Times, and this was a fantasy mystery blend. You follow a group of individuals who are working for what's called the Stranger Times. You follow one main character, but you have this cast of characters that she gets to know throughout the book, and she is kind of down on her luck looking for a job and ends up working for the Stranger Times, which is a news entity that covers strange and supernatural things that are happening. And throughout the book, you are following her trying to essentially figure out whether or not the people at this news station believe in the things that they're reporting on, if the things that they're reporting on are real or fake. And in the meantime, some weird things go on in the city that they have to report about. I just really enjoyed this book. I had a lot of fun. I ended up rating it a 4-star. There were, I think what would have pushed it above the edge to me would have been probably me connecting with the characters a little bit more, because it was very fun and kind of crazy antics of a news station, like what you would think. You have like the grumpy editor, you have the people who've been in it forever, and then you have like the youngster who wants to be a star, things like that. And I found that really fun, but I was lacking, I think, probably emotional connection. 4 stars is still an amazing rating, and I actually am going to continue on because I continually think about this book. So the next book in the series is called This Charming Man. I absolutely love these covers. And so I do plan on continuing this, hopefully in the month of February, if not in the very near future. I am excited to see where the Stranger Times goes and solve another mystery. So we shall see. The next book on my past TBR was The Hanging City. I also rated this one 4 stars. This was a fantasy romance blend. So this book follows a girl who is running from her past, and specifically running from her father. And she goes to what's called the Hanging City. It's the city of, I think it was Kogmar, I think is the name of the city. But it's been a minute since I've read it, so I could have the name of the city wrong. But the city is literally hanging underneath a bridge, and it is the city that trolls inhabit. So humans and trolls have had wars in the past. Trolls have been pushed kind of to the edges of society, and they have built this massive kingdom under this bridge. And there are some things going on in the world that have caused there to be a massive drought going on. So you have kind of the larger elements at play, but then you also have our main character, who I'm not going to remember her name at this point in time, but she is seeking refuge from her father, and she goes to live in the city of trolls. But because of the past elements, humans and trolls do not get along, and there is a definite caste system, and humans are so low they're not even on it. And she kind of has to acclimate to this very rough and gruff society and this different culture among trolls. And there is a love story intertwined. I am not going to spoil who the love interest is because there is definitely some question at the beginning of who she ends up falling for. But what I dearly loved about this book is the environment, the world building, the city, seeing how they cultivate their farms within the city, because they really don't go above the hanging city. They don't go above the bridge. And so, or very rarely, I should say. And so they have to learn how to cultivate things within this canyon that hangs, or within this canyon that their city hangs. And also these monsters that dwell within the canyon that they have to deal with within their city because of where it's located. And it's just, I also really enjoyed the characters. What ended up pushing this down to a 4-star instead of a 5-star for me last year, because it was a 5-star up until I hit 2/3 of the book. And I think the ending was fairly rushed. And I think that there were some things that were done off page that I really would have liked to have seen. This book could have been another 100, 200 pages for me, and I would have been living the good life. I felt like there were some decisions made that I just needed a little bit more development from. And even the author does state in the author's note that the first part of the book was written earlier, and then I think she eventually came back to it. And so maybe it was just the timing of when she came back. She obviously had authors evolve, and so maybe that was just a different style that she wrote the last part in. That's just me. I don't actually know if that's true, if that's why the second half is any different, or if that was what her vision was originally. But I still really love this, and I do want to reread this, so eventually I will own this, just not yet. The third book is The Blacktongue Thief, and this book was 5 stars. I bought it instantly, and I am so excited to continue with the series. However, it's not published yet. This is published, but the rest of the series is not published yet, and I don't know when it will be. I think there are rumors that the second one is supposed to be published soon, and I haven't looked in a while, so maybe the second is published, and I'm going to have a surprise whenever I go online, but I think that we're still waiting. This is fantasy horror, and I had a really good time with this. I'm just going to read you guys the synopsis because I really do think that it sums up a lot of what I want to say, but then I'll also talk about some of the things that I really enjoyed. So this says, Kinch owes the Takers Guild a small fortune for his education as a thief, which includes but is not limited to lockpicking, knife fighting, wall scaling, blah, 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 and a few small magics. His debt has driven him to lie in wait in an old forest road, planning to rob the next traveler who crosses his path. But today, Kinch has picked the wrong mark. Now, common enemies, uncommon dangers force this Blacktongue thief in a mysterious, honor-bound night on an epic journey where goblins hunger for death, krakens hunt in dark waters, and honor is a luxury few can afford. I freaking loved this book. It was a wild ride. It has such dark and grimy moments. The goblins, the human-eating goblins, this book goes there. I mean, I was listening, I remember exactly where I was on the highway while I was listening to the scene where they end up interacting with these cannibalistic goblins, and oh my god, it was awful. I remember I was cringing and I had to read something happy afterwards to kind of get it out of my brain. So definitely not for the faint of heart. And it's not, the entire book is not like that, but there are definitely portions of this book where it's very dark and very dangerous for these characters. And the amount, this book creates a fantasy world that I don't necessarily want to live in, but it's so interesting to see how everyone interacts. You have giants, you have goblins, you have Kinch is Blacktongue, and so you learn about his people, and you also learn about the Takers Guild. So they have different rules that go along with. You can essentially have all of your education, you can be educated by these people who are very good at thieving and give you some really good skills. But if you don't pay them back, they take what they can when they can take it. And so one of the things that Kinch has to deal with is he has a mark on him that essentially tells the people around him that he owes the guild money. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens, but there are those marks on a lot of different characters in the story that you run across. And just to see what he has to deal with because of the people he's gotten in with, and the fact that he is desperate, but also does want to remain true to himself in certain circumstances. I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. And depending on when the second one comes out, I might be rereading this before I get to it. Now on to the books that I've read throughout the months that kind of fit the same mold, just to give you guys a few more examples if you are interested in looking at fantasy blended with other genres. The first is Stiletto, which is the second book to the Rook series, which actually I have the Rook behind me, so I'll show you that. So this is the first book in the series, and this series is fantasy mystery where you're following, I will say that the first book, The Rook, is more of a mystery than the second book, because the main mystery of the first book is you are following a character named Myphany, who wakes up and, well, I should say someone wakes up in Myphany's body. And there is a note essentially telling this person that they can live Myphany's life, or they can decide to run and they have resources to run. But if they keep Myphany's life, they're going to have to live with the consequences of their choice. And you get to see kind of the fallout of that choice. And it is fantasy, the world that they're living in. There are some crazy monsters and crazy things that happen. And so Stiletto, you follow the same group of people. I'll leave it at that. And I liked this one less. I ended up giving this 4 stars because it does focus so much on history. However, it was still really interesting, and I am intrigued to continue with the series. But yeah, since it's the second in a series, I can't really tell you too much about the plot because a lot of what I could tell you is going to spoil the mystery for the first. So I think I'm going to leave it there. The next 2 books that fit the mold were a little bit disappointing to me. The first was Assistant to the Villain, which is a fantasy romance where you follow a girl who's down on her luck, ends up running into the villain for her specific town in the middle of the woods, and gets a job with him and has to work at his place of business where some really terrible things happen, and you get to learn about why he is the villain and the town around them and her job in general, which is like secretary to the villain. It was lighthearted and funny, but I honestly don't remember much about it now, which I do think speaks a little bit to my interest, and the world building I think was lacking, which is one of the reasons I think I can't remember a lot about the storyline. I ended up rating it 3 stars. I just thought it was okay, and it's definitely something that has faded from my memory pretty quickly. The third was House of Roots and Ruin, which I rated a 2 star, which is really sad because the first book I really did enjoy, which was House of Salt and Sorrow. You follow a family of 12 daughters who live on this island kingdom, and they are thought to be cursed by the townspeople because the daughters are slowly dying off in consecutive order. This is in the first book. And so you follow one of the daughters trying to figure out what's happening to her sisters, and there's like this really dark mystery in it. It is also kind of horror as well, so it's fantasy, or I don't know if I even said that. It's fantasy, horror, but also romance. I do think the first book is fantasy horror and then with a smidgen of romance, and the second one is more fantasy romance with a smidgen of horror, which is probably why I disliked it. Part of the reason why I disliked it. I also disliked it because I really did not like the romance. I can tell you that the second book follows another sister, so a different sister, and it also jumps time from the first book, which is another reason I think I did not enjoy it as much, because I do think that there were mysteries that were left unsolved in the first book that they could have continued with, the author could have continued with. And maybe they will, because this is a series that's going to continue, but at this point I think I'm done. Next, on to my future TBR. These books I don't know a ton about. I just know what category they fit in, and I might know a brief little synopsis. So these are the books that I will continue with, and I will talk to you guys about them in the next video. The first is one that I will be getting to this month. This is The Djinn Waits 100 Years, and I am so excited about this book. This is fantasy horror, which is one of the genre blends that I've had the most fun with. And just the little synopsis of this says, a gorgeously atmospheric gothic tale about a ruined mansion by the sea, the djinn that haunts it, and a curious girl who unearths a tragedy that happened there 100 years ago. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I have heard a couple of reviews about this that do talk about perhaps the Djinn not being as big of a character as maybe I will want it to be, but I'm still curious enough to pick it up and see if it tickles my fancy. The next is The Keeper of Enchanted Rooms. This is a book that I want to read mainly because I really enjoyed Hanging City, and I haven't read from Charlie Holmberg before, other than the Hanging City. And so this also just sounds fantastic. It says, so first off, I guess I should say, this is known as fantasy, this is historical fantasy, I should say. And this is Rhode Island, set in 1864. Estranged from his family, writer Merritt Fernsby is surprised when he inherits a remote estate. Though the property has been uninhabited for more than a century, Merritt is ready to call it home until he realizes he has no choice. With its doors slamming shut and locking behind him, Wimbrel House is not about to let Merritt leave. Ever. So, 2 stories right now that have someone stuck inside a house, or not, I guess it's not, the first one is not stuck inside a house, but creepy houses. Yes, please give me more. And the last book I'm adding to my TBR for the next Fantasy Genre Blends video is Empire of Exiles. And this book has been on my TBR probably the longest of any of the books that I've had on Fantasy Genre Blends. So I'm excited to finally get to it. It is a fantasy mystery, and the little snippet just says, magic, mystery, and revolution collide in this epic fantasy where an unlikely team of mages, scribes, archivists must band together to unearth a conspiracy that might topple the empire. I've had really good luck recently with Empire books. Engines of Empire is also about this massive empire and political intrigue and revolutions and things like that. And I've really enjoyed those stories recently. And so I want to read more. That is why this is on my list. As always, guys, if you have fantasy genre blends, so fantasy mystery, historical fantasy, fantasy horror, fantasy romance, anything like that, anything that mixes fantasy with genres, please leave me suggestions down in the comments below. I have a list in my bullet journal that I keep that I use for these videos whenever I do finish my TBRs, so please give me recommendations. I love that. Also, if you have read a fantasy genre blend recently, one that I have read or one that I haven't, more recommendations for me, leave those in the comments down below. I would love to talk to you guys about what you've been reading. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.